Remake Rewind.
Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decided remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike. As always, with me, I've got my two co-hosts. I've got Double D. What's up, little buddy?
Yo, Mike.
And we got Alex. What's up, other little buddy?
Yo, Mike.
Nice.
So this is Halloween special 2 of 3, and we're covering. I don't know if we want to call this a classic, even though it's it's made by a classic horror film director. You know, one of the most famous horror film directors of all time, George Romero.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not Dawn of the Dead. We already did that several years back. We are covering the Crazies. And yeah, have you guys seen either of these before?
I've seen the newer one. I've never seen the original, and apparently for good reason.
Yeah, the original one's been on my my bucket list for quite a while, and I was really looking forward to watching it, and I really don't know why. And I think this is going to be a little blasphemous. I'm sure this will upset some people. We don't have a huge audience, so I don't think we're going to upset too many people. But George Romero is the godfather of zombie films. He's one of the most famous, iconic horror directors of all time, especially because of Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Dead, which are great films. Dawn of the Dead, the original one, to this day is still one of my favorite movies of all time. You know, if you go back and listen to this episode, is the first year that we did Halloween specials on. Very near and dear to my heart because my dad lied and said it was based because it's an old movie, so it's grainy and whatnot. And to me, that's what documentaries looked like. So I told my dad it looks like a documentary. My dad said it was a documentary. The zombies really existed. This happened, a long time ago. Fucked me up as a child for a long time. So George Romero's been a big part of my childhood. And I went, like, when he did the fourth of the Dead movies, when he did Land of the Dead, I worked at the movie theater. I was super excited to see it and very disappointed. I've seen Monkey Shine, not a very good movie. And then he did a bunch of direct-to-DVD, knock bullshit zombie movies afterwards. So I feel like he's kind of like a two-hit wonder, maybe?
Two-hit wonder.
After watching this.
Day of the Dead's good.
Day of the Dead's decent. It's not as good as Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Dead. Yeah, it's not. It's interesting, but it has like the zombie who's kind of smart and is kept as a pet. Yeah. But that's not what we're talking about. It's hard not to talk about the legacy of George Romero, R.I.P., when we're talking about the Crazies. But this was remade in, I think it was 2010 with TImothy Olyphant. And I saw that movie at a midnight show. I just had turned 21 not too long before, and I used to go to midnight shows all the time. We'd go to BJ's, get a couple pitchers of beer, get inebriated, and then sober up watching movies on Thursday nights. And this was back when they were at midnight. This was also one of the first Blu-rays that I owned. So I used to watch this all the time, although it's probably been like 7 or 8 years since I've watched it. So I'm ready to talk about it. Who's got a synopsis?
That would be me. This is from David.
Hey.
A biological weapon gone awry is only the start of problems in the little town of Evans City, Pennsylvania. Bouts of insanity in the populace are leading to murder
Pause for dramatic effect.
and rioting until the U.S. Army turns up and things really start going to hell. And that's from David.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Dave.
Pennsylvania.
So this movie was filmed in Evans, Pennsylvania, and took place in Evans, Pennsylvania. It's also part of it is the same city that they filmed parts of Dawn of the Dead in. Yep. So the more rural scenes before they actually get to the mall, filmed in the same city. Highlights. Who has a highlight?
All
of
right,
this
I
film?
got one. The lady sweeping the grass.
Damn it, you took mine.
Well, that whole thing, even in that same scene, the lady sweeping the grass was funny, but there was a guy who had like a trident. It was a pitchfork. But he just like stabs the guy in the arm and then like pins the guy to the ground by the arm and then just like walks away. And then you see the woman sweeping behind him. Like, it's a weird movie.
Oh, so weird,
This
dude.
is so weird. Did you guys have problems watching it?
I did. I mean, like, it was like the first half hour. I think I texted you guys. It was like first half hour through, and I wanted to be done already. It was very difficult.
It took
to watch.
me 3 tries to watch this movie. I watched this on like Thursday or like Wednesday or Thursday. I started to watch this, and I kept getting distracted by things on my phone, and then I fell asleep. And I remember falling asleep and seeing like quote unquote crazies killing people, and then the soldiers using flamethrowers. And then I fell asleep and looked at my phone and woke up like a half hour later and saw the exact same thing. And I was like, did I pause this? Did Katrina pause this for me? Is it the same thing? Nope, the ticker in the movie definitely went by. And then I watched a few minutes, fell asleep, and then woke up again, and the same thing happened. Like, it was super repetitive.
Yeah, it was very strangely paced.
Yeah. And then I rewatched it again on Saturday or Sunday morning. I watched it again and just went through it, and I was just kind of, I had to force myself to watch this, and I was really looking forward to watching this. I really wanted to like this, and it turns out like this movie, the only reason it has a cult following is because it's George Romero. This movie did not do well financially. It did not do well critically. They re-released this movie in every region of the United States. They released it under a different name. So they released it under like 4 or 5 names. The version that I watched on Amazon Prime, even though it said Crazies on the poster and everything, and when you pause it, it said that, but once they got past that intro scene, it said Codename Trixie. It said Lee, I can't remember the name of the producer, but it's like Lee something presents Codename Trixie, which is just one of many names that this was released under.
Weird.
Interesting.
You guys know who produced this film? Well, I just said it's Lee something.
Lee something.
But it was a pornography producer.
Oh, wow. That makes sense.
It's pretty relevant, though. You know why?
Why?
So back in the day, way back yonder, before any of us were even a sparkle in our dad's genitals.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, back in Pennsylvania. No, so George Romero did Night of the Dead, which was a huge hit. It changed cinema forever. It really did. It made zombies what they are today. Right after the success of that movie, because it was made with basically no money, a lot of studios were offering George Romero money to do horror films, and he didn't want to do that because at the time, horror was basically, depending on who you asked, it was just a step above porn, and in some communities, it was even considered a step below porn. So he really wanted to make some like serious films. So he did like one serious film, which actually starred the guy who's like the scientist in this and the zombie expert in Dawn of the Dead. He did that, and it didn't do very well. So then he kind of bridged the gap and did like a dramatic film that happened to star a woman who became a witch. And both bombed. So he decided to kind of go back to this. And this porn guy was like, hey, I'll produce the film. Fronted $250,000 for this film. And they went to this small town in Pennsylvania. A lot of the extras are just townsfolk. Most of the soldiers were just high school students who put on costumes. All the special effects were done by Tony Pantanello, who did most of the special effects for a lot of George Romero's films, who's also like one of the motorcycle guys in Dawn of the Dead. He did all the special effects, and then all the pyrotechnics and explosives and squibs were done by the local fire department. So like this was done on a shoestring budget and not a lot going on.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot going on cinematically.
I guess.
I mean, more like there was a lot of pieces they put together in this movie that didn't make sense.
Sure.
I don't know. This movie to me was just so scattered. Everything was like jumping around so often.
I have one big problem with it overall, and I'll get to in a second. But because you stole Alex's, kind of
the sweeper
big thing, Alex, do you have anything else you want to talk about in this movie? Any highlights? Can you think of anything else?
Highlights? The one that really disturbed me was the one scene with the daughter and the dad.
Oh yeah, that was weird.
I was like, I didn't actually think they would go through with it, and they did. And I was like, what am I watching? Like,
I couldn't tell because initially it seemed like trigger warning. If you don't, just skip ahead if you have any domestic stuff for probably like 30 seconds to a minute. But there's this girl who we don't know how old she is. We're supposed to assume she's a teenager. Her mom died, so it's her and her dad are going around with the leads, David, Judy, and Clank. And it seems like Clank is into this like teenage girl, but then there's this point where the dad's saying that she's all he has, and then there's a scene where he's like fucking her, and it's like initially it seems like a rape, but then she's like laughing and seems to be enjoying it, and then Clank seems jealous. It's just fucking weird.
Yeah, it was super weird.
And then
it wasn't short.
He goes,
either.
No, it was a long scene.
Yeah, it was like a good 30 seconds of him just like gyrating on top of her. And then he goes and like hangs himself, and everyone's like looking at Clank. He's like, I didn't do it. It's fucked up.
Yeah,
It's a fucking
totally.
weird movie. And the movie opens with like a dad trying to murder his whole family.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How did those kids get out?
They didn't show.
Yeah, I don't know. But the other thing that's weird about this movie is there really isn't a villain in this movie. Like, who are we supposed to be afraid of? The Crazies? Because all the Crazies are technically victims. Which, some of them were just violent. Some of them were
Fucking crazy.
goofy. And some of them... Is it the military? Because the military seemed inept. And there were... Like, the colonel guy really seemed to want to be doing the best. And he was just handed, like, a shit sandwich.
Yep.
And told to, like, bite down. This is what you've got. Because the military is ill-equipped. And then, I guess, the soldiers in the white mask. But I don't
even
know,
then, they seemed like they wanted to help people, though.
they did. Like, too often, they would take off their masks and be, like, hiding out in, like, a shelter and being like, hey, we'll, this is weird. And, like, what's going on? And, everybody seemed to want to help. So there really isn't a villain or a bad guy or an entity to be afraid of in this.
It's just the virus.
But even the virus, like, so I think this is the biggest problem I have with the movie compared to the new one. And obviously we'll go back and forth a little bit, but I don't feel like the Crazies were crazy enough in this.
Well, I did like that there was different levels of crazy in this one. Like,
But the problem is there's one line of dialogue that makes it where you don't really know if some of the violent people are legitimately crazy. So there's a line of dialogue where David says something along the lines after they declare martial law, and he says, the mayor says something similar, that if you declare martial law and you try to take these people's weapons, they're going to fight back. And then David says something along the lines of, like, there's some rednecks and hillbillies out there who are just waiting for an excuse to shoot people, and kind of thing. So it's like, and you see this, and like even at the end of the movie, there's a point where Judy is now infected, and she ends up getting herself revealed because she's supposed to be hiding. And so she's just kind of like running around, and you see these like guys like running and shooting, and then they shoot her, and then they just all stop. And they're like, "Oh, hey, David, how are you doing?" Like, they were just going around killing things. Like, they weren't crazy.
but they were crazy.
I don't know if they actually were, because like they immediately stop and like, "Hey, David, how are you doing?"
I don't think
"Oh,
got
you're
it,
a
Alex.
firefighter. He's cool, guys. Don't shoot him." Kind of thing. So it seems like those guys were just going around either trying to stop the Crazies and kill the soldiers. But
I
the
think
lines
that,
are so
that
blurred.
just brings more of the fear to the movie, because you don't know who's who or what's what until you get in close, and then you're gonna die either
guess.
way.
Maybe, but
fucked
there's
up.
still, it didn't seem.
I think it definitely could have been handled better. Like you do have some points, Mike, and I also see some points with you, David. But it's just, I don't think the movie handled those topics too well. Where like really, I didn't care. Like
Yeah, no, I didn't.
And that's the thing where like George Romero normally are pretty heavy-handed, but they make sense. Is he normally has some sort of satire and theme. Like Dawn of the Dead is very anti-consumerism, like, and it's very apparent and very obvious throughout the whole movie. And this, like, I can't really tell what the message is supposed to be, like, at all. So is it anti-military? Is it anti-chemical weapons? Is it anti-weapon? Is it anti-Second Amendment? Like, what is it?
It's a story.
Tell me what it is. No, I really don't know exactly what it is. That's the thing that I couldn't really get. And I kind of feel like this is a precursor to Dawn of the Dead. Like, I feel like this is a natural segue into it. Because there's obviously, these aren't direct zombies, but there is a mentality to it. But I don't know. How did you guys feel about how they handled, like, the quarantine?
That was so bad.
put everyone into high school.
I just don't get it that there was no, like,
There was no
screening process to
checkpoints.
try to keep them
Yeah,
separate.
It was just so bad.
It's just put everybody in the room.
Even the
And they
the
didn't know who the
scientists.
doctor was. What the fuck?
Yeah, that made no sense. Well, and the one thing I do like about the movie is the ending is pretty ambiguous as to whether or not, like, the whole time they just pulled this random scientist who'd happened to be working on the project, and the whole time he's like, I'm not even the lead guy, I'm just like one of the dudes.
But I'm your
not...
best hope.
He goes, but I'm already, well, he was like, put me on a plane, there's nothing I can do, and they're like, well, you're already here, we're not going to send another guy. So eventually he kind of just like, fine, fuck it,
But then
I'll
fucking
try to
figures
find
it
a
out.
cure. Well, but the thing is, you don't
And then
really
he
know
dies.
because he keeps saying that there's no way, and then he starts to act a little erratic,
Yeah.
and it's possible because he hasn't slept, it's possible because he's stressed, but he's like, "Am I seeing this?" And then he
Could be
pulls like his assistant over, and she's like, "I don't see what you're seeing. Explain it to me." And he's like, "There's no time," and then he
And
like
then he's
runs
just
off
running
with the
around
vials.
with 2 open vials.
Yeah, he's just running around with 2 vials, and like, there's a town full of crazies, and the soldiers don't know what's going on. They just see this guy running around with blood, and they should know who he is. And then he breaks it, and then afterwards,
Well,
How did he die?
he fell down over. They accidentally knocked him over the ledge of the stairs,
Okay,
and
so
then
it
he
was
cracked
over.
his head.
It just looked like he just fell over.
there was a sequence.
No, it showed him tumble. He fell over the rail,
Okay.
and then You see him hit his
I
head,
see the blood.
and
There-
then you see the
that was
blood
obviously
like,
coming from his
pour out.
hand.
There was a
Yeah.
sequence where he drops it down. And I thought he did it purposely because he looks down at it as he dropped it, and then it just cuts to it being smashed. I was like, oh, what?
Yeah, that was a little weird.
What?
It was supposed to be like they ran into him, but they clearly didn't have like the budget to do the take again, because that's what it was supposed to be. Is that all the crazies like stampeded and bumped him and made him drop the blood, and then he fell over, which is weird. And then there's this whole like thing where they talk about, and the math didn't line up, but they said something along the lines of like the town had 3,500 people in it, and they said that 1% of people or something like that, 1 in 10,000 or some shit like that would be immune, and they need to find the immune person. So statistically, it's possible that there won't even be somebody in the town that's immune, whatever. But they talk about later on, as they're getting ready to wrap up and send the colonel to the next town, because they're like, yeah, we're pretty sure people got out, so we're gonna have to go to the next town. But
And
you're
we're
the best
sending
bet
you
because
in.
you've gone through it. You're the only one because at least you went through this before.
I loved his
Whatever.
response though. They're like, the one scientist like, we'll figure it out sooner or later. He's like, sooner or later. And
Well, his whole thing was, it's like, wait a second, you guys have been here for, the plane crashed a couple of days ago. They're like, yeah, we got here the day that it landed or it crashed. And he goes, you guys didn't have people ready for this? And then he goes, well, it's supposed to be like deactivated. It's 90, and he goes, that means it's 99%. So 1% like that, and that's your military standard. That's not my standard and everything. So, the one soldier was just like, well, we did the best we could do. And then the colonel gets there and he's like, this is not a vaccine. This is a chemical weapon, whatever. And then he keeps saying like, I want to do this. And he'll say like, I want to put a guard every 25 feet. And they keep saying, we don't have enough people to do that. And he's like, well, get me more people. But then meanwhile, like, there's some like government people that we see every once in a while. They're like, maybe we should just nuke the town
yeah.
kind of thing. But then like, they're kind of bumbling and goofy. It's just,
I love their
who-
hair.
It's just so weird and goofy. And it just seems like everybody is inept. And then finally at the end, David shows up and he hears them talking about being immune and he doesn't say anything. It's just, I don't know. It's just a weird movie.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Judy, I liked where he kind of hid Judy in the cinder blocks, and she just kept sticking her hand out, and then when somebody would look, she'd pull it back slowly. It was just super awkward.
And she kept laughing.
Yeah. And then the other thing I thought was
do it
weird
again,
was...
Mike, do it again. It was perfect.
The other thing I thought was really weird was Clank starts to go mad, and you see it early when they go to try to get information, and David is like sleeper holding some guy for some information, and then Clank just goes and stabs him. And then they're like, David's like, fuck. And so they go into the house, and he's like interrogating one guy, and then Clank just decides to kill like everybody because the guy moved. And David's like, whatever, this sucks. Why are you doing this, bro? But he doesn't really like say anything. But then like David does kind of freak out, and he's like, I'm sick. I see these soldiers. I'm gonna like distract him for you guys. And then he fights them off for a little bit, and he's just kind of like sitting there, and this soldier just like walks right up to him
Shoots him in the head.
and shoots him in the head, and then he moves around for like 30 seconds after he gets shot in the head.
Weird.
Like he like touches a few things. He turns, looks around.
He like caresses the
sits
tree.
down.
Yeah,
twice.
he's all
Yeah, it's
touchy
fucking
with you.
weird. And it's like not like I understand like you can survive getting shot in the head, but a lot of times when you see that in other movies or in real life, it's like they're shot from a weird angle and it goes upwards or downwards and it only hits like a fraction. This was like straight side of the head,
through.
and
All of
the
his
side
brain.
of the head explodes out. Like it's like there's a hole in the side of his head that's like the size of a baseball. Like you don't move around after that.
It's like if you
It's
told a
stupid.
kid to die. Like, oh man.
The other thing that I thought was weird, and I think this is my last main note, because there's no triage process. Like the whole thing is, there's no triage process. The crazies act weird, but at the end, David hides Judy in these cinder blocks, and he's like, "Hey, we're just gonna hide here until like the soldiers leave. You stay here, don't be quiet. I can't put these blocks down from the inside," which you totally could have.
Oh, yeah,
like you could have stacked them behind. Like you could have made that work. But then he goes and hides in the most obvious place. Like he goes hides in a tower looking over the field, and sure enough, as soon as the soldiers show up, he just like they immediately go to where he's hiding.
Are you going to mention how he like gets rid of him by talking to the mask?
Oh yeah, that was pretty funny. I did like that.
I'm taking a piss.
Upstairs. Fucking A. Oh man, this is dumb. Ready for the next one, guys?
Yeah. 2010, The Crazies. This one is from A Met Goes On. All right.
A Met Goes On. Squash banana man. Sorry.
Pennsylvania.
As a toxin begins to turn the residents of Ogden Marsh, Iowa, into violent psychopaths, Sheriff David Dutton tries to make sense of the situation while he, his wife, and 2 other unaffected townspeople band together in a fight for survival.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
You want to hear something interesting about Iowa?
Sure. I don't know if
So,
that's a thing.
Hey, shut the fuck up.
Sorry,
Iowa has
Iowa.
hundreds of thousands of people.
A
Probably.
little bit less now.
So for work, my territory is the Midwest. So Iowa actually is one of the states that I cover. And I was hosting one of my clients in Iowa was at my work for training. And I had to, take him out to lunch and
You were gonna say
take him
something
to
else.
dinner and all that stuff and keep him entertained. He was born and raised in Iowa. Turns out Jason Momoa is from Iowa as well, not Hawaii.
Whoa.
And it turns out Brandon Routh who played Superman, is also from Iowa. And this guy that I entertained went to high school with Jason Momoa and said Jason Momoa was super nice, which it looks like Jason Momoa is really nice in like social media and interviews and whatnot. He said Brandon Routh went to a high school, the next town over, and actually was on the swim team. And my client said that he is faster than Superman in the water. So, yeah, just something interesting. I had no idea both those people were from Iowa.
Humble brag.
Humble brag. Yeah, that's what I actually said to him. What I said was brag. But this movie, I think the Crazies are handled much better. They start kind of weird, and they kind of are a little loopy. They repeat themselves, and then they kind of become like a blank slate, and then they come like almost like rage zombies in 28 Days Later, but there's still an intelligence around them the entire time. Like, they know how to use weapons, they know how to open doors, they know how to drive cars, they can set traps. Like, I thought this was much more interesting and scary than, even 28 Days Later to an extent. Like, 28 Days Later is a terrifying film because of, like, how ragey they get. But intelligent zombies are even scarier than running zombies.
And running zombies are pretty scary.
Running zombies are pretty scary, but what about running zombies that are also intelligent and can use weapons, guns, and drive and set traps?
I thought
it's just people.
using the guns was scary. They're just
Just
angry people.
unencumbered, unintimidated people. Well, the thing that's interesting is, like, some of them, depending on the level that they're at, they have their memories and they just don't have any inhibitions and are willing to kill. And then some of them are just become completely deranged. Like, and so there's still like those levels that David liked about the original.
Yeah.
But the levels are just crazy. Like, it's so much more obvious that there's a crazy person versus somebody who's just like taking advantage of the situation.
You know, the Metascore critic for this new one is actually lower than the old one.
That's crazy.
Crazies.
Legitimately, I really enjoyed watching this one. Like I said, I had this on Blu-ray, but I probably haven't watched it since it came out on Blu-ray. Like, I probably watched it once or twice and haven't watched it probably in 6 or 7 years. But it's been long enough that I honestly didn't remember a lot of it.
Yeah, same. I saw it in theaters, and I think I bought it on like a Black Friday deal for like $7, but I never watched it on Blu-ray. But I did see it in theaters, and I don't remember thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, same. I remember.
What did you guys think around this time? Did you guys enjoy it?
I don't know that enjoy is the right word, but I definitely liked it better than the old
more
one.
watchable than the old one.
Yeah,
It's definitely watchable. I enjoyed it for what it was. It knew exactly what it was trying to be.
yeah.
It
TImothy
and
Olyphant.
it had some. There's nothing groundbreaking about it.
I'm just not a big fan of TImothy Olyphant, except in Justified, and I have to say this is his closest movie role to Justified character.
He's
I've seen.
playing
Fucking
Bullock
hate
in
you,
Deadwood.
I love TImothy Olyphant. I thought he was. Say what you will about Die Hard 4. I
That's
know a
what I
lot
was
of
gonna
people
say.
don't like
Ever
it.
since that, I just lost my respect for it.
I think he's good in that
He's
role.
great in Hitman and
Well, Hitman's not a good movie. I'm not gonna hold that against him. He was trying to get out of TV and into movies, but I think he's really great. I thought he was solid in this. I really like him in that Netflix show, Santa Clarita Diet. He's fantastic in that. He's hilarious. He's charming. He's been on a couple podcasts that I listened to lately, and he is hilarious. And he seems genuinely nice and funny and charismatic. I think he's great. I like him a lot. So he's pretty funny in like his couple episode arc in The Office.
oh yeah.
I think he's good. I think he's really good. And Double D, you can go fuck yourself.
I do. I mean, what?
And I like how as he's aged, he's gotten more handsome, and he's got that salt and pepper look. Like I kind of wish as my hair gets grayer that I kind of get hair like his, where that salt and pepper look in the temples. That's what I want. So he's what I strive to be. Okay.
Good for you, Mike. Have a
I like
goal.
TImothy Olyphant. You can go fuck yourself, Double D. I've said it once, and I'll say it again.
Oh, no.
You bitch.
Oh, wow.
I think there's a lot to talk about in this one. I think there's some interesting things going on in it. And I like how there's things that are kind of foreshadowed and then come back. And then there's, you have kind of the layer where there's a point where you think that these rednecks that are just killing people for sport. And then it turns out they're not. They actually are crazy. But like it's kind of ambiguous initially.
Yeah, I thought
There's
they
a
were just
lot
hunting people.
going on. No, because like the same guys you find later on, and
I
they
mean,
are
like
all being-
originally when we first see them killing people in the streets, I thought they were just hunting people down just for the fun of it.
I think that they were probably both crazy, but they hadn't like devolved physically like the rest of them start to do. I mean, this movie I think has a pretty solid opening where it foreshadows a lot. Like you see the house burning down, then it fast forwards or rewinds 2 days back, and you see like that guy shows up on the baseball field with a shotgun. And he's just kind of like a blank slate, and David has to kill him. And then, there's a few really cool moments where like you're starting to figure things out, like in the mortuary. I thought that scene was solid. It's not that you haven't seen
The only thing
that bouncing.
I don't like is that
saw
it does
before.
double scares back to back.
What do you mean?
There's like a sequence.
Explain it.
So it was he in the mortuary. He cuts the guy's lips off to free him. Then the guy behind him is there. To scare him. He deals with him, and then it has that buzzsaw sequence. I'm like, it just defeats the purpose. Like, why?
I don't
why you
see that.
It's like
but the problem is it's not a. Like I think they even did that in Spider-Man 3
Wait,
with the buzzsaw thing, where like when Doc Ock, or no, still not Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 2, when Doc Ock's in surgery and they're trying to cut the thing off. I think there's something similar to that. Like I've definitely seen in other movies where a bad guy has the saw like that and it's bouncing across the floor and it stops. Like I've definitely seen that in other movies, so there's nothing unique about that. But I did like how he stopped him, how he like yanked on the cord and it pulled the guy's arm down and it like cut his own neck. Cut his own neck. Like there was at least some creative kills in this. There's a point where he's under a car in an oil change place. And he slides like that drip pan down and then lights it on fire. Like there's some unique kills in this. I don't think there are any that are completely unique to the film. That like this is the only movie that's done it. But I think that what I like about it is every time they're in a different environment, they use the environment to their advantage. And it does feel frenetic. It does feel frantic. It does feel like they are fighting for survival the whole time and just doing what they can to survive. So I did appreciate that aspect.
What it did essentially, to be honest, it made the movie the original more streamlined. It got rid of the military aspect, so it tells what one.
It didn't though.
Yeah, I mean, he got rid of the story of the military side.
Yeah, it made it more. It streamlined it from the original because it made it like the military. I think it was more defined that you should be afraid of the military and the Crazies. Because in this version, the military ultimately killed the entire town.
Yeah. with the
Which
big old
everything.
I didn't get. Why? What was the point of them separating the
Just to kill 'em all?
infected and non-infected? They're just
I
gonna,
think it would
Well, I
have been
think
easier for them to manage at that point.
I think that's exactly what it was. Is get all the strap down all the infected over here. We're gonna bomb the city anyway. But if we at least separate people, we can kind of act like we're saving them. They'll be more cooperative and it'll be easy to terminate them.
Right.
So I guess that makes sense. I did like that scene where they're like starting to separate people, and Judy could. I don't understand why her being pregnant automatically gave her a fever. I've never heard of that. But there's a point where TImothy Olyphant's character David wants to like escape, and this like town guy goes, "What's the point?" And he goes, "She's my wife." And he explains that his wife got taken too. And he's like, "Look, I'll tell you what. If you don't ask me why I have to go after my wife, I won't ask you why you won't go after yours." Something along
it's
those
different
lines.
though, because like
A fool's errand.
because Seth Bullock knew that his wife wasn't infected. If this guy he thinks his wife is infected, like he doesn't.
Right.
His wife is like, my
But
wife
at this
has
point,
a
they
fever.
don't know enough about it to know if there's a cure or anything. Like I agree to an extent, but also it's like the fact that he's questioning, and I can see why TImothy Olyphant would be upset. Like he's upset that the guy is questioning him and everything. I can see both points though. They're both valid. The other thing that I liked about this one, and I think it was more subtle and more nuanced than when Clank went crazy in the original, was Russell.
I really like Russell's character arc in this one.
Russell's character was great. I really liked him. He's from across the universe. I've only seen him in 2 things, but I like him in both things. But yeah, he was solid. I liked how he was really like the good friend. He was taking care of him, and he starts to go into madness a little bit and kind of oversteps his balance. And I like that David tried to be like, I'll hold the gun for a little bit. You've been holding it the whole time. And, he's sure that he's sick, but he's not quite ready to give up on his friend yet. And then once Russell realizes he's sick, he's just like, can I just walk with you a little bit longer? I'd like to try to be of use for you for a little bit longer. And then he ultimately sacrifices himself.
But did he need
that.
go out that way?
No, I think he could have just kept going and just distracted him.
I think that would
or he could have just hid behind the car and just started firing so that they would have to come forward, and then there would be more noise and more distraction. I think that's what I would have done, was hid behind the car like he did for a little bit and start doing pop shots from there, forcing them to open fire and try to flank him. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, not kill yourself. Oh, it didn't
What do
make
you guys
sense for him.
think about the car wash scene?
I thought it was weird that he punched through the window.
I mean, he's ragey.
I don't know.
It didn't seem like he'd done enough damage to it before he was able to rip it off. I do agree. But I did like the visual aspect of it, of like you'd see something, but then the soap would spray on the screen, and then a wipe, and then it wouldn't be there anymore. And there's a point where Russell's like sticks the gun out the window to try to shoot, and then the car wash takes the gun. Yeah. And David's like, "What the fuck?" He goes, "I saw movement. It's a car wash. Everything's fucking moving." And then Danielle Panabaker, you think is safe, and then like they just drop like a hose down and yanks her out of the car as they drive by. And then they happen to be jumping out of the car anyway. Then the helicopter blows up the car because it was waiting for them. That was pretty cool. I thought that was a pretty cool sequence. I did like when they also like he finds the family of the guy that he shot at the beginning of the movie, and he has like the son knifes his hand to the floor, and then they're gonna like torture the wife, and then he like has to like rip his hand out of the floor, and he stabs the woman with the knife still in his hand.
I think that scene really established that they were still intelligent.
Right. And that's, it's almost like Resident Evil 7. A little bit. I know obviously this movie came out well before, but kind of the crazy rage and shit like that. Like Resident Evil 7 I think was probably, to me, was like the most scary Resident Evil game in terms of just being like scary.
I think it was supposed to be more scary than 11.
Yeah, it creeped me the fuck out.
I haven't played it.
If I'm being perfectly honest with you. No, it's super creepy. You should absolutely play it. It's like the first one that's in a first person's perspective, and it's creepy. It's super creepy and disturbing.
There are some some scenes in the game where it's like PT almost.
Yeah, it's fucking weird, bro.
How do you guys like the design of the Crazies?
I liked it. It made
the
sense
evolution of them. I don't know, like the one in the jail cell. I like how he's just weird at first, and then gets a little self-injury, but trying to like trap the guys, and then he's fucking all bloodied out. That was cool.
What I think it makes sense from a physiological standpoint. So initially, like that same guy shows up to Judy at the doctor's office because he his wife says he's acting funny, and he repeats himself a couple. She goes like, "How are you doing?" He goes, he just kind of stares off into space, and then she like repeats the question. He goes, "I'm fine." She worries too much, and then he goes silent for like 5 to 10 seconds, and then he says the exact same thing unprompted. So it's just like a little off, and then he sets a trap. Like he goes and turns on the tractor. The mom goes out to investigate. He goes in to try to kill the son. The son hides. The mom goes back, and then he ends up locking him in the house and setting it on fire. And then, yeah, like Double D said, he's just in the jail, and he starts getting gnarlier and gnarlier. But they say they have an extreme fever. Their heart rate's elevated, so it kind of makes sense. Like, it just seems like they fucking are bursting capillaries everywhere in their body, and that's why they're all veiny and bloody and whatnot. Like, I think it kind of makes sense.
What? I do have a question about that lawnmower scene. Why would she stand right in front of it?
Right in front and yell?
Yeah.
Like he can hear?
Yeah,
Yeah, I wrote that down, too.
sense.
The other thing that I really liked about this movie, another interesting touch, was the government went and booted every car. So on the off chance they missed somebody. That is a lot of work, but they're trying to prevent people from getting out. Like, this military knew exactly what it was. Like, the day after the crash, David saw a couple, like, SUVs roaming around, keeping an eye on things. They immediately show up. They set up quarantines. They did have a quarantine status, like, you're infected, go here. You're not infected, go here. They were reviewing everything with satellite footage. They had the helicopter, trolling, making sure that nobody was still there. This was a much gnarlier military. Like, this was, and then they ended up nuking the town still. So, like, this was a much more prepared military, and it was kind of fucked up in that one. This was another great scene with Russell. They're going down the freeway. They see the black SUV, and they're pretty much at a point where, like, there's nothing they can do. So David goes in the middle of the street, and he's just going to start shooting at the car, hoping he can get the car to stop. And Judy's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I need that fucking car." And then Russell throws a spike strip out. The SUV fucking flips like a million times. He's about to kill the driver, and David's like, "I want to talk to him." And the guy's like super unapologetic. He's like, "A plane crash. What do you want me to say?" God, I think like he doesn't give a fuck that these people are people and like trying to survive. And then Russell just shoots him. He's like, "You said you wanted to talk. You talked." And then like, there's enough good stuff in here that I think made the movie interesting. But once again, I don't think it changed any. I don't think it was groundbreaking in any way.
No, I don't think so either.
Let's see, anything else that was still called Trixie? Oh, I also liked when Russell just shoots the rifle over and over and over again to like waste the ammo. He's this fucking heavy, and then shoots it a couple times, and then drops it because he just doesn't want to carry the rifle anymore. I thought that was pretty great. They see all the dead bodies. That was cool. I did like the truck stop scene.
What did you think about the turning off the water scene? Did you think that was necessary?
Yes, I do, because it kind of showed, because this was before the military was involved, and it's just it sets up David for being the hero,
right?
Doing what he thinks is right.
Yeah,
so
I think that's really the only
scene.
thing it accomplished is showing that David is going to do what he thinks is right, no matter what.
Right. So I do. I mean, it was only like a 20-second scene, so I don't think it really did much with the. It didn't really slow down the movie much, so I definitely didn't mind it.
Well, it was that plus talking to the mayor about not doing
the mayor, yeah. But still, like, once again, it's just, yeah, I guess it just shows once again. I think it just establishes that character, like he's a good person. So I'm for it. I don't care.
He doesn't care.
It's fine. It's totally fine. You guys want a little bit of trivia on this one?
Give it to me, Mike.
So when he's walking around town, when he first sees the SUVs, he sees a woman on a bike who's kind of like singing.
Yep.
As she's going around. She was Kathy she was Judy in the original.
Oh, really?
I thought she was the girl.
Or no, maybe she was Kathy. Give me 1 second. Let me double check what it was. No, she was
the daughter.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. That was Kathy. The other thing in the jail cell, if you look carefully, there's a couple times you can kind of see some graffiti, and it says Romero for George Romero. And Elizabeth Banks was supposed to play Judy, but she had already done Slither, and she thought this was too similar to Slither, so she passed it out.
Slither.
She's like, "No, I'm not going to do it." Slither is pretty solid. It's good. It's good. I don't really have much to talk about beyond that. I did enjoy it. I think there were some pretty interesting kills. The ending, kind of sets up not necessarily a sequel. Like, they could have made a sequel off of this if they wanted to. But it also just kind of shows that it's not necessarily a happy ending because they nuked the town. Although, like, the woman looks directly at the nuke as it's going off.
Yeah, her
And
eyes would have
they were
burned out.
close enough that, like, the truck, like, got lifted up and, like, the axle broke. So they had to, like, walk miles to Cedar Rapids.
Shouldn't
And
they,
then,
like,
there's a
die
satellite.
anyway from, like...
Oh, they would definitely get the cancer. They'd get the big C. But they walk into Cedar Rapids, and then you see a satellite imagery, and it says, you know, Cedar Rapids population 150,000, start containment or something like that. But yeah.
Don't we have like tons of megaton bombs that are like almost as strong
What do you mean?
as nukes? Like, aren't there?
Oh yeah, there's like hydrogen weapons
Is it?
and other.
Do they only use a nuke to destroy the virus, or like with it? I don't know.
There are definitely like huge bombs, like they're like hydrogen bombs that don't do as much radiation. But I don't think there's anything beyond like nukes still for like overall blast radius. But I think they may have used some other bombs that don't do radiation because they don't want fallout. They would definitely have to probably do one for Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, for sure, but not what Ogden Marsh.
Ogden Marsh,
I
no.
don't think that deserves a nuke.
Nah, probably not. Probably not. This one was interesting because this one didn't go airborne, right? This was just water, right?
Yeah.
Well, they kind of implied it because in that barn scene, right? The soldier was like, "Oh, they told us not to take off the mask."
They said that, but I think that was more to. I don't know. I'm torn on that because
what's her name?
other
Judy,
people didn't
after that,
seem to
said
really
it must
get
have gone airborne now.
No, maybe, but maybe that was just a precaution. Who knows?
Who knows?
The other thing I thought was interesting, going back to the original, actually, was they said like that in the original it did go airborne.
Yeah,
so
and they said it was highly.
It was in the
contagious.
water, then it was airborne, and then they talked about how it only affected primates. So, as long as there's no monkeys around, like your animals are safe for some shit like that, which I thought was kind of funny. But I don't know. Do you guys have anything else to talk about on this one?
Not really.
TImothy Olyphant.
I like TImothy Olyphant. He's everything I strive to be as I
no idea what I'm
age.
capable of.
I think this is the second movie that we've covered that he's in. He's technically in The Italian Job, briefly.
Technically.
Oh, no, it was Gone in 60 Seconds. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
he was
apologize.
the
I apologize.
guy.
I apologize.
TImothy Olyphant.
TImothy Olyphant. I think he's pretty great. And fuck you, Double D.
Fuck TImothy Olyphant.
Oh, I liked when Scotty died.
Who's
Who's
Scotty?
Scotty
the
was
kid?
the
dumbass kid.
Oh,
Yeah, he deserved it.
Yeah, he was
Good.
dumb. Was he infected or not?
Probably
think
not.
so.
He was
I
just
don't think
dumb.
so. I think he's just stupid. He like ran at some soldiers who were like killing people. So good.
Dumb.
Oh, you know what? One other thing that I didn't bring up that I really liked in the original one. There's a point when like they're doing one of the 18 montages in that movie. There's a point where they're in a house and you see this old lady knitting, and a soldier walks up to her and she just like stabs the hell out of him with a knitting needle.
Yeah.
But then leaves one in him and goes back to like knitting, and she keeps like as she's pulling on the thread, like you see him moving a little bit, and like you just see the thread attached to this dead or the yarn just attached to this dead man. Actually, I don't even think he was dead. I think he was just like twitching, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" But yeah, I did like how she just goes back to knitting after stabbing a guy.
Also, there was one that scene where the
Trident or the pitchfork.
No, that was
Trident.
No, the scene in the newer
fucking
one
gnarly.
where TImothy Olyphant gets stabbed in the hand, and he stabs the lady in the neck with his hand.
Yeah.
I said that.
He
already.
definitely
We-
should have
we
gotten
discussed this.
infected right there.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that's what
for
I was thinking.
sure. Well, what I think the implication is
Is
that
he
his wife
immune?
is a doctor, and they probably did some first aid that was done off screen.
Yeah, but I
that's
don't
not how.
think. I mean,
The thing is, this happens in movies all the time. Like there are so many movies where people get shot through the hand or stabbed in the hand or something like that, and then they just go the rest of the movie like it doesn't affect them. Like
But then he like
no, but I'm talking about like
because
crazy
he
infected.
touched her with his blood and her blood.
So her blood is all up in his
right,
blood.
but maybe it isn't actually airborne. Maybe it is only digestible. We don't know enough about the virus. I get what you guys are saying. Maybe he's immune. We don't know. But the other thing that was just like what drives me crazy is anytime I see this in a movie, I'm like, you can't use that hand
at all.
for the like.
Oh, yeah.
you just-
Wasn't he
no.
using that hand
But
to
he's,
turn
like, able to
the
hold
car
a
key? I was like,
gun.
how you doing that?
Yeah, he's able to fire a gun. He's able to
Use the
hold a
lighter.
weapon, no problem. Use the lighter. Driving is not a problem at all. It doesn't hurt his hand. No,
I think one thing we can say for sure is he's gonna die in Cedar Rapids.
Good. Good. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want him to die. TImothy Olyphant's
It's like,
great.
oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Anyway, I think we do need to ask the question: was this remake worthwhile? Was it necessary? Did it add anything to cinema? Did it improve on the original? Any and all of those above. Just all, yes, no, maybe.
I'm gonna say
yes, no, maybe.
Judging from the original, it did not need to be remade. As like I could have gone my whole life without seeing either of these movies, but I'm glad it was remade because this is a much better movie.
Yeah, I think this is. I mean, obviously, 2010 was like the era of remakes. Like so many movies were getting remade back then, and obviously we still have a lot now. But I really think the early 2000s to mid 2000s were like remake, like just all the time. And Dawn of the Dead in 2004, dude, or 2005 was really good. And I think they wanted to try to capitalize on George Romero properties still. But yeah, I think this movie didn't have a big budget. Like, it made its money back. It was moderately successful. It could have done a sequel. It made enough money that it could have done a sequel. I'm glad that it didn't push for one. What about you, Alex? What do you think?
I am going to be the contrarian, and I don't think it was a good remake. I watched it. I find it more watchable, but I think the original was more. It was at least trying to tell something interesting in that.
Like what? We established earlier we couldn't figure out what the satire was, what the message
I think
was.
Because like it's doing like the military is not necessary. I think that's more interesting, is that the military is not necessarily bad, because they are trying to do good. It's just that they happen to be inept, and we get to see the point of view from the townspeople. But with the remake,
that
it's just very straight through. Like, this is the townspeople, and these are the bad people. And it just makes it, like a typical movie. At least,
I guess I can see that. I just think the problem is also the original was so hokey because obviously it had bad, no budget, and it just wasn't planned very well. Like, so much of it was redundant and just like the same stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah, if we could get the original, like if someone could tell that story really well, I think that would be really interesting. But
yeah,
that's not what this
I don't think we need
is.
another remake though. Like it's torn. Like, I think if you took the Crazies from the new one and the action from the new one and kind of combined it with the ineptitude of the military and just the lack of understanding, because although we didn't know a ton about the virus, like, everyone seemed to know exactly what was going on from basically the beginning of this movie. I can see that. I think you could merge the two and make a better movie. I guess you can say that. I guess that's fair.
Yeah, I would want to watch.
But if
that.
you had to go back and rewatch one, it's gonna be the new one.
Yeah.
Like, gun to your head, I said, I'm going to murder you, Alex. I'm going to drive to San Francisco and murk you unless you watch one of these again. Which one are you going to watch?
I don't know. She had the sweeping lady. That was pretty good.
Sweeping lady.
I'm going to murder you if you don't pick one. Which one are you going to pick?
I guess I watched the TImothy Olyphant.
Okay. Double D, same question. I'm going to murk you.
Yeah, I'm
Which
going to
one
watch
do you
TImothy Olyphant and make
There
fun
you
of
go,
him
'cause
the
he's
whole movie.
great. All right. Well, that's it, I think. I think we've
You don't know what I'm
padded this
capable
episode
of.
enough. But thanks everyone for listening to Remake Rewind. You can check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MDXpods. That's it. Thanks for listening. We've got one more Halloween special that we're going to be doing. We're going to be covering Let the Right One In next. And I think the other one is just... Are they both called Let the Right One In, or is the other one just called...
fuck. No, I forgot. Let the one in. Something.
Let
whatever.
me in your
We're
pants.
gonna watch them. One's like Swedish or Danish. The other one's American. And they're
Pennsylvania.
very, very similar. But it's gonna be great. It's gonna be good. They're both good movies. Good movies. 2 years in a row with a
Hey.
Chloe Moretz remake.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Carrie.
Oh no, we didn't do Carrie last year. That was the year before.
Really?
Yeah, we're gonna do two. Yeah, because that was when Dustin was still on the show.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Later. Happy October, dudes.